Maybe it has no wick. Well, I didn't find the wick on that one. Oh.
The whole show gonna go this way, Shirley?
Is that an idea?
It's an ill woman.
Right.
I guess probably when they're gonna look, you can also all smell things.
Yeah. Well, here's a way to nice. Yeah, she's doing it.
Bill, there are two others there in the middle.
All right.
With that funny little one.
Oh, I see.
Trimming off.
I don't think he's talking about you.
Anyone have a knife? Peggy said to start this with ceremony, but I don't think she meant burning Carpenter Hall down. Although that's very Elizabethan, it's also reminiscent of our history here.
You're right in character.
I think that's a Foster's candle, you know what would do that?
Where are the bats? Voila.
Here, that look like a spinning.
My name is Shirley Patton, and it's a very real pleasure for Bill and me to be able to welcome you here to this special celebration on the eve of William Shakespeare's 421st birthday. And to celebrate Angus Bulmer's response to the work of that master playwright. Angus was one of those rare individuals who was able, with a generous spirit, to give so much away and never to lose any of himself. And this festival is one of the evidences of that generous spirit. And we are also celebrating tonight the beginnings of his festival 50 years ago. Isn't it wonderful that 7 members of that original company are presently living in the Rogue Valley and still contributing in a vital way to this wonderful enterprise? Because of our great good fortune in having them with us tonight, this is what we plan to do. First, we want to lift our hats to Twelfth Night, the play that was the other half of the double bill of that season in 1935. The Merchant of Venice, as you recall, had been performed in the spring at Southern Oregon Normal, and the plan was to revive it and to add Twelfth Night for 2 performances, July 2nd and 4th, with Merchant being performed on the 3rd of July. Twelfth Night, a play full of excesses, too much love sickness, too long a period of mourning, too many cakes and ale at too early an hour in the morning, too much pride, and a great deal of youth. Now, most of these excesses we're all pretty familiar with, or can remember when we were guilty of those excesses. And cutting through that over-sentimentality and overweening ego came a young woman and her twin brother who were washed up on the shore of this land, and they were direct and straightforward, resourceful, witty, filled with humor, and with hearts as big as all the world. It's a play rich in character and delight. And since we don't have it on our 1985 playbill, alas, we didn't want it to be overlooked. And who better to tell us about it and what it was like than some of the people who made it happen 50 years ago. So tonight we're in for a feast of good old-fashioned reminiscing, and we'll also hear some of the glorious words of the play. And thanks to Joe Vincent, we're going to hear a few of the songs as well. In the brief quote from Angus' book, which we have at the top of our program for tonight, he uses the words joy and enthusiasm. And I'm sure there was a great deal of both in 1935. But I'm sure there were also other words that these friends would like to use to describe that first season. And we're looking forward to hearing from them. I wanted to apologize for any distractions you may suffer through tonight because of our video taping or from people getting photographs for our archives. Hank is here. I know they'll try, and Jim Long is at the video camera. I know they'll be as unobtrusive as possible, but we felt this was too important an occasion not to record it. And Nora wanted me also to mention to those of you who came in late and didn't sign the guest book, she would really like to have you register your presence here tonight. So when we adjourn for our birthday celebration in the exhibit center, those of you who feel that you don't want cakes and champagne and have to go right home to bed, please sign it here. The rest of you may sign it down in the exhibit center. Bill, would you introduce our honored guests?
It's a pleasure, really, for me, Johnny-come-lately, in that it wasn't until Angus came to Stanford University to work on his doctorate with Gertrude, 1947 in the fall, that Angus introduced us, that is, students at the school, and got us interested in coming up here. But I had an advantage in that I grew up in the Rogue Valley, and I knew many of these people beforehand. And it's a real pleasure for me to introduce them now. I'd like to start with George Smith, George Francis Smith, and you have the program on one side, the original program from 1935, so you might like to see what parts they played in these two plays. Audrey Lofland Stedman. Robert Bob Root. And another Robert and Bob Stedman. William Bill Cottrell. Maxine Gearhart Hunnell. And certainly not least, but last here, is Dorothy Pruitt. Now I'm going back and ask each of these individuals to tell us some anecdote or some impression of that first season. And we're going to start with you, George.
Well, Bill said that we should sit down, but I'm afraid I can't tell you about this sitting down. I think most of you are familiar with Twelfth Night. I've seen it's been presented here a number of times. I had the honor of playing Malvolio. And toward the end of that, there is what we call the famous jail scene. The way that it was played here was that in the inner below, there was this flat. And on the flat toward the top, I think Bob can remember this probably as well as I, there was a hole, a window with some bars. And Angus thought it would be very descriptive if I would be behind the flat with my hands up, and the other characters would be in front, and they teased him. There was Bob played a dual character there, the clown and also the minister, Sir Topus, what did you tell me? And he came and attempted to console Malvolio about being in jail. And it went very well, but I'm not sure whether it was the first night, but I think it was one of those two nights. This flat, which was just sort of propped up there on thin air, somehow came loose. And I can remember very well that night thinking, what will Angus think if this flat goes up like this and here I'm wandering around the screen? Well, of course, it wasn't quite that bad, but, and I don't think Angus maybe knew anything about it, but that's very vivid in my mind, trying to remember the lines and holding that thing up so that it wouldn't go off.
I think there are a good many stories about that jail sequence that we ought to somehow put together. The festival, and I can attest to this personally, with the many thousands of actors that have appeared on its stage, has been responsible for quite a number of romances. And in case you haven't put it together, those of you that do not know Audrey and Bob, one of the earliest ones is represented right here. I don't mean to embarrass you, Audrey, but we want to hear your anecdote.
In the beginning, we had curtains between each scene, and I was one of the curtain pullers. We opened the show. Every show was opened by the curtain pullers. We went out to the center of the fourth stage and made our bow after the fanfare and came back and opened up the big curtains, and that was the beginning. Little did I know that when I pulled that curtain 50 years ago, what it would open up.
Bob? Bob Pruitt.
I was one of the fortunate few did not have to learn any lines. And I also had, but my memories are the close-knitness of the first groups, because we were small town people in a small town with a genius helping us to expand. And it's always been my memory is that we did everything together. We did everything that had to be done. Nobody was a star as far as backstage was concerned. We were all equal. I with no lines, and Stedman and Smith with all the stuff that they did. I did happen to have one thing happen to me that was almost unique and somewhat like George's story. I was a judge. I was the only Venetian judge that had horn-rimmed glasses. This disturbed Angus no end because there were no horn-rimmed glasses in Venice at that time. And he chewed me out. Incidentally, these are the same ones. I have to tell Bill I lie a lot.
I thought maybe they were the same frames. I'd like to tell you now that Bob has returned to help us by being on our board of directors. And And the next gentleman, I don't think he realizes it because I think he had left for the service just before I was able to get into Medford Senior High School. I'd been waiting all my junior high years looking at the wonderful plays that he was directing at the Medford High School and just waiting to work with him. But at least I did get to get some help on lighting when I was still in junior high. He came and helped us at times with the shows over there. I think Bill Gates was involved in that, if I remember right. And at any rate, that was kind of a start. And Bob did so many things in those early years, in addition to helping Angus put the whole festival together. But he certainly was one of the prominent actors at that time. Bob?
Well, one of the things that I did, the first entrance I did that was something. Audrey had built some, I was doing Feste. I didn't have any shoes, so we put some rubber shoes, and Audrey put a cloth around the things, and she had 3 or 4 different seams around the bottom of the shoes. And we had tried them. We had a couple or 3 tryouts, and not tryouts, but rehearsals and that kind of thing. And so the last night, the first night, I mean, I started it, and there were 2 cake. I can't say the word. Sir Andrew and Gus were here, and I was supposed to come and get between the 2. And I ran out here, and I stopped, and those things that Audrey had sewed broke, and I slipped, and I fell clear back, and came back up in here and said my lines between the 2. Gus reached back and got a sliver about that long, took off my rear, and handed it to me. And I shucked it out like this, and the Dr. Redford saw it again the last night, and he said, "Why didn't you do that last?" I thought it was a lot better that.
I'm sure that most of you know this next gentleman who served in many capacities in those early years as an actor and director, Bill Cottrell.
When I look back upon those early years, as Shirley just said, it was, of course, a time of great exuberance, creativity, and joy. But we had very little to work with. Bob Stedman here made most of our lighting, the hardware, out of stovepipes and whatnot, and made dimmers out of saltwater dimmers and that sort of thing. And it was a continuous work from sun up to sundown, and there was always something that never quite done. And in that first year, I believe it was, we read in the paper about someone who didn't really know where the thing was taking place, about the Shakespearean festival near Ashland. That's right, wasn't it, Bob?
Yeah, that's right.
And so we thought that was rather funny, and we lived on peanut butter sandwiches because we didn't have time to, Lois didn't have time to cook. None of us had time to do anything except eat peanut butter sandwiches. So we began, this saying went around which when we'd get worn out, tired, and needed something to break the monotony, we'd always say, "Which do you like better, the Shakespearean festival near Ashland or peanut butter?" The answer was always peanut butter, peanut butter. But you know, I'm going to tell you something I've never told a living soul. We were lying. We liked the festival.
It was really a pleasure several years ago to have Maxine come back to the Rogue Valley from Bend, wasn't it, Maxine? And now she is busy doing so many things with the theater, the archives, helping Nora, and she's been a source of information that's just been wonderful to us. Anyway, Maxine Hunnell.
Thank you. Well, as Bill said, we had so little to work with. I lived just 3 doors from Lois and Angus Bomer, so it was very easy to get up early in the morning, we started at 7 in the morning and finished maybe 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And as I've said before, my mother said I was crazy, but I know now that I wasn't. And after working as hard as we did on the costumes and having those ready for the performances, one vivid memory I have of Twelfth Night was the last performance on July 4th. And the fireworks went off before the play was finished. Lois, they were not to do it, they were to wait for a signal, but someone was anxious. And Lois and I stood in those windows that were curved, that were in the Chautauqua wall. They're covered up now with ivy, but they were very open then. And we just stood there and cried. We could cry. The performers had to go on with the performance with the fireworks going off within the vision of the audience. But the audience stayed with us.
The fire codes have changed and it was not possible. Dorothy.
I would like to say that I remember very well that some of our favorite lines were well punctuated by the fireworks. First, I'll say something serious. It was a hallmark in my life when Angus Bomer invited me to become a part of the Shakespearean festival he planned to establish. And the dream began with high spirits and struggle. And I would like to say how proud and grateful we all are that the festival flourishes in such magnificent fashion today. As Angus might say, never stop dreaming. He didn't, nor did we, and that's how it was. The only humorous thing that I remember in connection with my work, it was pretty funny, I guess, we learned afterward. It was when I was doing the role of Ophelia. And Ophelia was on the bier. It was a very dramatic moment in the tragedy. But it was a very windy night. And my costume was very frail and very filmy. And it started moving as I was on the bier, and the wind was getting higher and higher. So pretty soon the audience apparently thought they were supposed to laugh. And it really almost turned into a comedy instead of a tragedy.
We've heard from several members of that original company who could not be here tonight, but did want to send their greetings and good wishes to all of you. One was Dolph James, who called me from Eugene today, who had planned to be here, but his wife is ill. But he said on the 4th of July, on that period, 2nd of July, they will be here for sure. The other was Jim Parsons and his wife, Effie, who wanted to be here but were unable to, and send their greetings. And I'm sure, in fact I know of at least 2 members of those original before the 1940s years that are here tonight. Catherine Stanford, I know I saw you. Well, please, won't you?
Stand up, Catherine.
Well, and if you have an anecdote, tell us.
Well, I was in Mary Wise in Windsor, and I was Mistress Page. And that was the most hilarious play, I think, that we ever put on here. We laughed and laughed, and Falstaff was so good. But to getting in this laundry cart that we had to borrow from the laundry was a task, because he was a big fellow. But once we got him in there, and we had the fellows moving up, that was taking care of that. But it was a fun time. I loved it.
I bet I know the laundry too. We had 2 sisters, Kitty and Jean Fabric, Kitty Engel later, whose parents ran the Metro Domestic Laundry. Is that where the car came from? That later became the Dumas Foundry for any of you who are Medfordites. Let's see, Edmund Dews. Yes.
Here he
Oh,
is.
yes, please.
I can't claim to have taken any part in the festival right at the beginning, except to attend the plays. But I was so impressed as a junior high school student with the opportunity to see Shakespeare in Ashland in the old Chautauqua building where I had played all kinds of dangerous and probably illegal games. That I invited two friends from California to come to Ashland for the 4th of July and the 2nd and the 3rd of July. They came for the fireworks, not for the fight, but they went to the plays nonetheless. And I'm glad to say that I'm now in touch with those two friends, and I'm very hopeful that they will both be able to be here in Ashland for the 2nd of July this year.
Walt Hofstra is here in place of a very dear friend and former president of the festival and a gentleman who was associated with us in the 30s, who is too ill to be here tonight. But Walt, would you like to say something on his behalf?
Yes, on behalf of representing Elliot McCracken, who just got home from the hospital today. He's doing well, and he gives everyone salutations and love.
Thank you, Walt.
Elliot was with us last December when we were planning this event, and we are all remembering him tonight too, and his contributions to the festival, not only in those early years, but consistently through the years. I want you to all look at the program. This is a reproduction of that first flyer from 1935, and I thought we should read over these names because our 7 on the stage and the 2 in the audience that represent that early time are, of course, a small core of the energy and love and persistence and commitment that went into this operation. Bill has mentioned Dolph James, Merrill Gunter, Jim Foster, Helen Ellenberger, Beth Cummings, Marion Frost, whose name was also Jack Frost, as I found out when I was putting together that player index for Golden Fire. I kept finding, in those early years particularly, people kept changing their names and the spelling and adding letters. I thought there were hundreds of more people. Found out they were all the same. Angus L. Bomer, John Barker, Bill Eberhardt, Jean Doherty, Jean Fabric, Tom Palmer, John Haar, Carl Moore, Ed Butts, John Chipley, Helen Ellenberger, Helen Edmiston, Beverly Young, Winata Aldrich, Wilma Koppel, Vernon Clark, Jack Sanderson, Don Darneal, and on the staff, Lois M. Bomer, R. Berry, Billy Brandis, Noma Weaver, Marion Adie, Gordon McCracken, and in the orchestra played prior to the plays. They weren't part of the play itself, but they did perform. Mary Roberson, Alicia Coggins, Florence Hubert, Leslie Kincaid, Andrew Johnson, Phyllis Farr, Frances Akins, Ruth Hardy, Laverne Roberson, Jean Billings, Lorraine Spar, Flossie Thompson, and Rosa Franco. And someone told me that Alicia Hardy was also part of that orchestra, and her name was left off the first program. So I imagine there were other people that contributed in many ways who never got their names on the programs, who were with Bob Root going through the Ashland dump. He has a good story to tell about that. Maybe never made the program. So to all of these people and all those that they represent, we say our thanks.
Shirley, while you're speaking of people we may have overlooked, I spoke of only those that I knew who were here from the 1930s. If we didn't mention any of you, would you please let us know now? Anyone else? Okay, I guess we got it.
All right. Now, Bob, tell us, how did this all begin?
You mean clear to the...
Right.
Well, for me, I was in a play, a bunch of one-acts, and we were in the Greens. I didn't belong to the Greens, but every time there was a play, why, they'd ask me to come by and we'd help. So Gus was one of the people that judged the things. And after the show, he came to see me and said, why don't you come over to Southern Oregon? There's some things I'd like to do, and I think you can help me. And I said, I don't have any money. And he said, well, if you can get one term going, I think that I can get you some money. So that's what I did. I worked and worked and worked and got my $12 for my tuition. And I stayed at home at Phoenix. And so he got me for the next year $15 a month and tuition. And I taught, helped him teach his play production class. And then he came to me one day and said, come, I want to show you some stuff. So we went up on the high drive and looked down, and here's this big circular with a stage into it. And he said, what is that? And I said, well, that is a Shakespeare theater. We'd been talking about that quite a little bit, and he said, yes, and we're going to have a show there one of these days. Well, that year, some people downtown said to Gus, if you, we think that you could take care of the 4th of July celebration. And he said, well, okay, if you will do one thing. If you will make a shell for a Shakespearean festival, a Shakespeare play for us. So for $200, I think it was, the city got the material. And the Uncle Sam, on one of those letter groups that they had.
Works Progress Administration, wasn't it?
Yeah, right. I got the thing going, and that, here we are, we're going to have a show, we're going to have a theater, when? We don't know. Well, what are we going to use? What are we going to play? Well, we decided that the only thing we could do, we do the Merchant of Venice, and then everybody would go home except a few, and then we'd redo it again and do Twelfth Night and put it in this theater. So that's what we did. The next year we were going to we made, I think as I remember, $600 we made. And with 50 cents in the dollar and that kind of thing. But we thought, well, boy, we won't have to worry next year because we got this money. And but Mr. Redford, Dr. Redford called to him one day and said, Angus, that money you've got, now you are a theater, you are a man here in the school, and you were working in the school at this time, and this money should go into the general fund. It'll be there for next year, but it's got to go in that fund. So Gus put it back into the general fund. But the only thing was, the football went haywire this year, and that money went into the football. So we started again from scratch. We didn't know exactly, we didn't have any actors particularly. In fact, Gus said to me, the way I got into my first show here, he said, you can be Bassanio, and I'll do Shylock, and I think George, and he told George, he said he'd tell George would do the thing, and then the rest of them we will figure out and find people, and that's what we did the first time. When we got into Twelfth Night, I was having lots of trouble. Gus I was doing Feste. We called it Fest in those days. And I just couldn't get a handle to Fest. And I thought that he should be a very small fella and sort of an old fella. And here I was 6'4" and 23. And all of a sudden, something happened, and I did some things, and I started to make him a younger and this kind of stuff, and all of a sudden, it worked. It began to work, and each day I felt a lot better about it, and until we got to the shows. Here's the first show, and it's a drunken brawl. And here is they'll say something, and everybody in the audience will go, what? Start to laugh, and they just pinched it off like that. My God, I'm laughing Shakespeare. And it took us, about a third of the show, and then you would decide, I guess we're supposed to laugh. And then from then on, we just had a lot of fun. But at the very first, they really didn't think they ought to laugh at Shakespeare. When we first made the first Merchant of Venice, we trooped it to Klamath, and in the afternoon, if everybody in the high school had 50 cents, he could come to the show. And so they all got their 50 cents, and some of them did come. But when the door, when the doors opened and they came down towards this Pine Tree Theater, you could hear, oh boy, when the girls came in, with their tights and pumpkin hose, woo-hoo, everybody was going. I didn't mind that much, but then when I came in, they were doing the same thing. But after about 5 minutes or less, they quieted down, and from then on, they really worked at it. And those kids told the other kids, and a lot of the kids that were there in the afternoon came back. And I figured right then that this thing was going to work. If we could take those kids and do with the actors we had at that time, and do a show that the kids would like, and that everybody would like it. So that's the way it started, early.
Well, we know how you got found at the Grange. How did the rest of you get connected with Angus and the festival?
Maybe I can tell you what it was an absence of other things to do.
Of course, that is true. That's true.
If you didn't play basketball and you didn't like to throw horseshoes, then you got in the theater.
Well, of course, the girls. The boys, there weren't very many boys in Southern Oregon, and there were a lot of girls, so some of us went around with the girls.
You may not realize that we were talking about a student body of, say, 240 people total.
We had 300.
That was when you were in school.
I don't know, everybody, we weren't quite sure whether people wanted this show, the Shakespeare, or not. I was teaching again in the summer. I was doing Gus's play production, and I'd walk to Southern Oregon from here, and that's the time when I learned my lines, because I didn't have any other time practically, and here I was, we didn't have money to get, and we didn't know how to build wigs, or didn't have the money either. And so we grew our own hair, and long hair. In 1935, you know, they weren't quite sure that we ought to be there. So there were some people that helped us, but I don't think the whole town were really interested. Well, that's not true, but they're not quite sure whether we were doing the right thing or not.
Bob has alluded to the fact, and of course most of you realize that this was the middle of the Depression, and so there weren't many jobs, and that's very true about the theater that Angus began. I think that some of the talent he had was available to him mainly because they couldn't get work.
Well, that's the reason that I came back.
Right.
I was at Oregon State, and I ran out of money.
Well, there's another theater that started about the same time, the Barter Theater in Virginia that many of you have heard about. And it got its name because those actors couldn't get work, and they decided to leave New York City and go down with Mr. Porterfield and put on plays and have the farmers bring in food. And they could get that, instead of paying for their tickets, they could bring a chicken or something. And out of that, they decided they'd start a restaurant. And they helped support the theater with the bartered food and cooking it and wear underwear. So I don't know whether it's true in this particular sense, but we have someone else who's been very important to the theater. I'd like to sidetrack this just for a moment. And was it because of your daughter that you got interested in this, Margaret? Then that was before the war. Jean Schuler was part of the, I guess she was in the company of what, 1939, 1940, somewhere in there. And then after the war, Margaret became a very important person in helping to co-found with Dr. Marjorie Bailey, the Tudor Guild. Margaret, would you stand? Can you? Please, just speak.
It grew up on my lap. Mother was one of my best friends. And we played bridge. And he could sit on our laps while we were playing bridge. So very warm spot of my
I think she's talking about me, and I still play lousy bridge. Can I tell one more story?
She always tells me how lousy.
One of the things that was done for, I think, very early, why KMED offered Angus to do a series of radio programs. And since I was the one that didn't know any lines, why Angus asked me to do it. And so we were given 15 minutes every Thursday afternoon on KMED in the Vaughter-owned Sparta building. And it was a totally stark room with a microphone that stuck up and a little stand that you talked to. Well, if at that time you tried to discuss the customs and mores of the Shakespearean era, nobody would pay any attention to it because they didn't, first they didn't understand it, And second, there weren't any books to read about it. So, but there were we found three good sources of information. And so I tried to put programs together. Well, talking 15 minutes to a not very interested audience on Thursday afternoon was not, you know, I mean, we didn't have a big audience to play to. So the only thing I could figure out to do was to talk about 5 minutes about these things, which I thought were interesting. And then we'd have 10 minutes of somebody playing the piano, singing, something to pass the time. Well, we had been offered to do, I think, 9 programs. And the eighth program, the only musician I could beat into coming to the radio station was a young man who had taken trombone lessons for something less than 9 months. I'm not sure that it was his skill, but we were not asked to do the 9th program.
Bill Cottrell, why don't you tell us what it was like for you in that preparation period?
Well, I was just thinking, when you asked, how did we get connected with the festival? See, Robert and I are both from Phoenix, Oregon. And Robert claims he is here because it was the Depression. I say that Robert had another reason that he was here, whether he likes it or not. Robert was an actor. He was the star of Phoenix High School.
Oh, Lordy, yes.
For 4 years, I sat there and didn't get into a play while Robert played all those big roles. And finally it got to be, he finally graduated, thank goodness. And I got to play the role of Andy Hardy in Skidding. That's the only play I'd ever been in. And I was wild to get into a play because I liked plays. I used to do plays with goats out on the farm. But goats are like Bob Root, they don't know their lines really. But anyway, there was another reason. I mean, Robert was an actor. He enjoyed the theater. And the first day that I enrolled in the school out here, I went to the registrar's office and signed up, and then I crept upstairs to look at that theater. I heard that there was a stage up there. And while I was up there looking at that stage, thinking, wouldn't that be grand, how long and wide it was and how narrow it was, but wouldn't it be grand to be on it? In came a couple of other young people. And they were a man and a woman, young, and I thought they were students, and they were looking at the stage. And we said hi, and they said, well, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm looking at that stage because I want to get on it. And the man said, well, you stick with me, bud, and I'm the one to put you there. That was Angus and Lois. So there was a feeling of quite a few people, George Smith and various other people, besides Bob and I, but who really wanted to act. Don't you agree with that, Dorothy?
Yes, I do. Absolutely.
I mean, it wasn't just because it was Depression. Or because you didn't want to throw horseshoes. I mean,
You were stage struck, let's face it.
that's right. Well, you'd like to be in a play.
Dorothy, how did you get involved?
Well, this isn't particularly funny, but it is an interesting step in the development of the festival. My husband and I operated a music store in Medford at that time. It was known as Pruitt's Music Center. And we had made the acquaintance of Lois and Angus Bomer, and socially. And they used to come to our store after we closed on Saturday, usually the weekend. And we would have little musicals. We had a large studio with a grand piano and all, and we had much music there. And Angus loved that studio. He looked forward to every weekend coming over. We'd have little suppers and lots of music until well past midnight. Well, that is how I came to be invited to join the festival he was planning at that time. But also, Angus had a very practical idea. He thought it would be wonderful if they could establish a box office for tickets in Medford, in addition to Ashland. And he thought the studio would be ideal for it. And so it proved. we opened the box office the second year of the festival, and it showed an enormous step up in ticket sales. Well, that's really the point of the thing, that was our first box office aside from Ashland. And Mrs. Edith Stevens, some of you will remember that name. I know Margaret Schuler will. She was employed by us at that time, and she was made manager of the festival box office. And she took care of that for 3 or 4 years, as I recall. She managed the whole festival ticket sales in Medford at our music store.
Maxine, were you a student, or how did you?
Yes. I was a student, and I could sew. And I had worked on costumes for other productions, so when this came, it was just the natural thing to do. And I am so grateful that I had that experience. And as Nora knows, I continue to use it because when the productions close at the end of October, Nora and I go to work in the exhibit center, and I'm there many times with my little featherweight, the little Singer sewing machine, just like the one Lois had that we sewed many costumes on. Those, as well as the old treadle machines that we had out on the lawn. And the first year I taught in Grants Pass, my first paycheck went for a down payment on a featherweight, and I tell the story that the other 2 teachers who had come from Ashland to Grants Pass to teach took their paychecks down and made a down payment on fur coats. Well, you know where those fur coats are now. And my featherweight goes down to the exhibit center to do costumes and curtains and most anything, right, Nora? So I'm still at it.
Can you tell us something about the costuming procedure? When we look at the pictures, they really look remarkable. And yet I understand that you had so little to work with.
Wasn't it $40 that we had for...
I remembered 75, but I was a big spender.
No, $40 was the budget one year. All went for dye and thread.
And the material was unbleached muslin that we used for damask. And I really had a thrill last week when the costume department had a coffee for the crew and the volunteers. And they were showing, the young man was showing the costume they're making for Portia this year. And they're using exactly the same technique that Lois and I used in 1935. They're using a stencil and painting this beautiful design, very much like the one that we used. However, we used unbleached muslin, dyed it, didn't press it, left this wrinkly effect, used a potato stencil, and then highlighted it with gilt paint. And the damask that Portia wore was just beautiful. And
When
I thought it was
put the lights on. When I put the lights on them.
Yes. And Bob Esbasano had a bright blue outfit trimmed in silver. And of course, I think many of you know the story of the tights were World War I long underwear that we got for 10 cents a pair down at Perrine's. But the dye came off, didn't it, fellas?
You can laugh about those underwear, but they're better tights than I have ever seen. They never, ever. I had for 5 years with those pants, and they never did get baggy in the knee.
Bob, that's wonderful. But those costumes were worn year after year. In looking through at the archives, and Nora and I were noticing that Angus wore the same costume as Sir Toby in all the productions that he did. Gee, we don't do that now, do we? Get new costumes for everything. But we used unbleached muslin for the damask, and flannel was our velvet. And we were into trunks and closets and Ender's department store, getting old drapes and any kind of material that we could use.
Shirley alluded to a story about the dump that came up when we met in December. You want to follow up on that, or is it Bob Ruth?
That's Bob's story, that's not mine.
I have all the horror stories.
Oh, that was me. I missed it.
Well, I don't care what dump it was, but we did send out scavenging parties to the local dumps and stripped material off of old sofas and stuff to give us something with texture and color and something other than the handmade dyes. And incidentally, the men got involved. We were boys at the time. We got involved in cutting out those potatoes and learning how to stamp stuff. Everybody worked together, and that was one of the great things about it. It was a great equalizer. I was almost as good as Stedman at stamping. He was obviously better at words than I was.
Well, Bill, do you think we should do some of those lines from the show?
Should we have some words from 50 years ago of Twelfth Night?
I have a suggestion. Can we open the windows?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that possible?
Sure. I'll say if we're going to do this.
If I-
You guys are hot there. You have to.
It's not too warm.
Can they open it?
Yes.
I think so, sure.
There's a couple of them anyway.
So shall we start?
They're going to open the windows, aren't they? Right?
There it goes.
The scene takes us back. I remember the words 50 years ago on the seacoast after the storm when a bunch of bedraggled sailors and little Viola come trailing onto the scene, and we hear Viola's words.
What country, friends, is this?
This is Illyria, lady.
And what should I do in Illyria? My brother, he is in Elysium. Perchance he is not drowned. What think you, sailors?
It was for chance that you yourself were saved.
Oh, my poor brother. And so perchance may he be.
True, madam, and to comfort you with chance, assure yourself after our ship did split, when you and that poor number saved with you hung on our driving boat, I saw your brother, most provident in peril, bind himself courage and hope, both teaching him the practice, to a strong mast that lived upon the sea, where like Orion on the dolphin's back, I saw him hold acquaintance with the waves, so long as I could see.
For saying so, there's gold. Mine own escape unfoldeth to my hope, whereto thy speech serves for authority the like of him. Knowest thou this country?
Aye, madam, well, for I was bred and born not 3 hours' travel from this very place.
Who governs here?
A noble duke, in nature as in name.
What is his name?
Orsino.
Orsino? I've heard my father name him. He was a bachelor then.
And so is now, or was so very late. But a month ago I went from hence, and then 'twas fresh in murmur, as you know what great ones do, the less we'll prattle of, that he did seek the love of fair Olivia.
What's she?
A virtuous maid, the daughter of a count who died some 12 months since, then leaving her in the protection of his son, her brother, who shortly also died, for whose dear love they say she hath adjured the company and sight of men.
Oh, that I served that lady, and might not be admitted to the world till I'd made mine own occasion mellow what my estate is.
That were hard to compass, because she will admit no kind of suit, no, not the duke's.
There is a fair behavior in thee, captain, and though that nature with a beauteous wall doth oft close in pollution, yet of thee I will believe thou hast a mind that suits with this thy fair and outward character. I prithee, and I'll pay thee bounteously, conceal me what I am, and be my aid for such disguise as haply shall become the form of my intent. I'll serve this duke. Thou shalt present me as an eunuch to him. It shall be worth thy pains, for I can sing and speak to him in many sorts of music that will make me very worth his service. What else mayhap to time I will commit, Only shape thou thy silence to my wit.
Be you his eunuch, and your mute I'll be. When my tongue blabs, then let mine eyes not see.
I thank thee. Lead me on.
Shirley was worried about doing that because she is also the mistress of ceremonies and the lady welcomer of the evening, of the planner, the decorator, and all the rest of it. And I really wanted her to do it because she's the only member of the company today who has ever played the role of Viola. And we all hate her for that. She played it in another very great celebratory year. That was 1964.
No. I was Mariah in 1964, and so it was 1969 or something. When Mark Murphy got his big break, because the actor playing Orsino got a job at the Long Wharf when we still had about 4 performances to go. And so Mark had been playing Valentine, I think, and they were scurrying around who could play Orsino. And Mark, who's very quiet and doesn't push himself, was tapped to do the role. And he was so marvelous, and it was fun to see the audience, the whole company go, oh, wow, look at Mark Murphy. And we have been looking at Mark Murphy ever since.
Well, anyway, I wanted to let you know that she did not push herself forward, that I pushed her forward. Thank her.
One of the things that was happening 50 years ago that still happens today is the fact that rehearsals were taking place simultaneously. They were working both on reviving Merchant, because there were many people that were new to the cast that hadn't been in the spring production at the college, as well as mounting an entirely new production. And so while they were working on Twelfth Night, there were same people rehearsing for Merchant. And Bill Cottrell, who played Old Gobbo that first year, played in a subsequent year Lancelot. Isn't this right?
I played Lancelot the first year.
Anyway, tonight, he is going to share Lancelot with us.
He had arrived monthly, you know. Was that the first year or the second year? Second. Oh, well, anyway. Well, this I will attempt to do the way I did this 50 years ago. It's the same throat, but not quite the same voice. He comes out and says, "Certainly my conscience will serve me to run from this Jew, my master. The fiend is at mine elbow and tempts me, saying to me, Gobbo, Lancelot Gobbo, or good Lancelot, or good Gobbo, use your legs, take the start, run away." My conscience says no. Take heed, honest Lancelot. Take heed, honest Gobbo. Or as aforesaid, honest Lancelot Gobbo. Do not run. Scorn running with thy heel. Well, the most courageous fiend bids me pack. Here, says the fiend. Away, says the fiend. For the heavens, rouse up a brave mind, says the fiend, and run. Well, the conscience hanging around the neck of my heart says very wisely to me, my honest friend, Lancelot, being an honest man's son, or rather an honest woman's son, for indeed my father did something smack, something grow too. He had a kind of taste. Well, the conscience says, Lancelot, budge not. Budge, says the fiend. Budge not, says my conscience. Conscience, say how you counsel well. Fiend, say how you counsel well. To be ruled by my conscience, I should stay with the Jew, who, God bless the mark, is a kind of devil. To run away from the Jew, I should be ruled by the fiend, who, saving your reverence, is the devil himself. certainly the Jew is a very devil incarnation, and on my conscience is a kind of a hard conscience over the counsel me to stay with the Jew. Fiend gives a more friendly counsel. I'll run, Fiend. My heels are at your commandment. I'll run.
Was as Malvolio. I've heard that over and over and over again. So. Whoever said,
I do.
Tell them how wonderful you were.
I do.
You want me to?
Oh, yeah. He was pretty good. It was fun to be playing with him. On the what do we call that scene with when he was in the house in the dark house and bound? And anyway, all you could see was just his hands, and those hands were so expressive. You could, I would say something. I'd come around and say something and go back, and Gus would tell me what to do and go back again, and I would go around. And those hands, you could just see that how bad he felt. And I thought he was pretty good.
Thank you.
Well, I like the scene the best where he comes out on the balcony, remember, with a nightcap on and a candle, and says, "My masters, are you mad or what are you?" Remember that scene? When Angus and you were in that down there below drinking it up?
Not I.
Oh, it was Aguecheek. Right?
Yeah.
Aguecheek and Gus and Kitty Ingle and sorted other Mariahs. I thought that was a marvelous scene. You wouldn't give us some of it?
I don't.
What was the secret of that Malvolio? That's a tough role. What did he do so special?
His timing was perfect.
I think so.
And it's terribly important in that role. He always took his time, and every gesture was just right. He was super. I think the best Malvolio I've ever seen.
Good.
The best I've ever seen.
And Angus was the toe. Anybody want to talk about Belch?
Well, Angus's Sir Toby was the best Sir Toby I have ever seen.
Well, good. Thank you.
And I think Angus, this is my own personal opinion, I think that Angus, when he saw Robert here and realized what a Feste, how big, tall Robert was, and Angus was not that tall, and how they would play together in such a wonderful fashion, I think that's one of the reasons he wanted to do Twelfth Night.
Well, yeah.
I would
And
like to
couldn't-
add how beautifully Bob as Feste moved across the stage. He was like a ballet dancer. Although he's a tall man, he would get across the stage with such grace and abandon. It was perfect for the role. It was marvelous.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I wish I'd have known it at that time.
But you probably all have seen that picture in the gallery down here, the archives of Angus and Bob sort of twined around each other, drunken, and Angus is drunken, and you're holding him up. You know, what a beautiful composition those two were, of Angus, that little round, roly-poly, padded out, red-nosed, drunken Toby, and the great hovering, as it were, the guardian angel of Feste. I've seen the play done several times since, and I've never seen those scenes done as well. And I believe they were done well. I don't think I was just remembering them, because we had audience reaction, didn't we?
Yeah.
Wild audience reaction.
Absolutely.
Well, I can remember so well Angus saying to us in the rehearsal, if the last person in the row can't hear every word, that you say, then we fail. And he drilled that into us, and so it was just a part of our creed.
How are you doing back there in the back row?
You had to do it. And I think the other thing that, I don't know whether the people today have fun, but we just had fun when it was work, and we had blood, sweat, and tears, but we enjoyed it, and we thoroughly enjoyed it. Those scenes that they're referring to with Malvolio and the clown and Angus and Bill Aguichi, they were a delight, and I can remember the fun that we had just in the rehearsals and in the plays themselves. So I hope they have as much fun now.
How about that with our new companies?
Never. We don't have fun that
It's work, but it is fun.
No, we have a lot of fun.
I love the story about the breakfast nook where this teensy-weensy theater got started, and Bill, wasn't it you that put the sign up on the wall after they'd been eating spaghetti and laughing very heartily, and the wall became kind of marked up with grease. And Angus, I think, credits Bill Cottrell with putting a sign up saying, "Don't laugh on these walls."
I think that was actually Robert, wasn't it, who said that?
No, I don't think so.
But the Teensy Weensy Theater came because I had been to Eugene, Oregon that year at the university, and I was telling Angus about the glories of the very little theater up there. And Angus says, well, that's nothing compared to our Teensy Weensy Theater.
It just held the 6 of us. That would be Lois and Angus and Audrey and Bob and Bill and I. After rehearsals were over, we went back to the breakfast nook and had spaghetti or usually peanut butter or maybe scrambled eggs and talked about the day and planned for the next one. And sometimes that was 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning. And we did that, and then back at 7 to work again.
How long was your rehearsal period? If you were opening on the 2nd of July, when did you start?
As soon as school was out, right?
Yeah.
As soon as college was out.
And Angus was teaching in the morning, so you just rehearsed afternoons and evenings, was it?
Yeah, just those two.
Yes, yes. And the rest of the time we were stirring things in the
I
boiling
would
pot and
take his
hammering.
class at Southern Oregon so that he could rehearse in the summer.
Dorothy? Here's the first Olivia, for several seasons, right? And the first of
2 seasons.
2 seasons of Olivia. The great and distinguished lady, played by a great and distinguished lady. And the brave and adventurous lion.
Do you want to stand up?
The dress is kind of nice too, aren't they?
Give me my veil, come, throw it o'er my face. We'll once more hear Orsino's embassy.
The Honorable Lady of the House. Which is she?
Speak to me. I shall answer for her. Your will?
Most radiant, exquisite, and unmatchable beauty. I pray you tell me if this be the lady of the house, for I never saw her. I'd be loath to cast away my speech, for besides that it is excellently well penned, I've taken great pains to con it. Good beauties, let me sustain no scorn. I'm very comfortable, even with the least sinister usage.
Whence came you, sir?
I can say little more than I have studied. That question's out of my part. Good gentle one, give me modest assurance that you be the lady of the house, that I may proceed in my speech.
Are you a comedian?
No, my profound heart. Yet by the very fangs of malice, I swear I am not that I play. Are you the lady of the house?
If I do not usurp myself, I am.
Most certain if you are she, you do usurp yourself. For what is yours to bestow is not yours to reserve. But this is from my commission. I will on with my speech in your praise.
and then show you the heart of my message.
Come to what is important in it. I forgive you the praise.
Alas, I took great pains to study it, and 'tis poetical.
It is more like to be feigned. I pray you keep it in. I heard you were saucy at my gates, and allowed your approach rather to wonder at you than to hear you. If you be not mad, be gone. If you have reason, be brief. 'Tis not the time of moon with me to make one in so skipping a dialogue.
Will you hoist sail, sir? Here lies your way.
No, good swabber. I'm to hull here a little longer. Some mollification for your giant, sweet lady. Tell me your mind. I am a messenger.
Sure, you have some hideous matter to deliver when the courtesy of it is so fearful. Speak your office.
It alone concerns your ear. I bring no overture of war, no taxation of homage. I hold the olive in my hand. My words are as full of peace as matter.
Yet you began rudely. What are you? What would you?
The rudeness that hath appeared in me have I learned from my entertainment. What I am and what I would are as secret as maidenhead. To your ears, divinity. To any others, profanation.
Give us the place alone. We will hear this divinity. Now, sir, what is your text?
Most sweet lady.
A comfortable doctrine, and much may be said of it. Where lies your text?
In Orsinio's bosom.
In his bosom? In what chapter of his bosom?
To answer by the method in the first of his heart.
Oh, I have read it. It is heresy. Have you no more to say?
Good madam, let me see your face.
Have you any commission from your lord to negotiate with my face? You are now out of your text. But we will draw the curtain and show you the picture. Look you, sir, such a one I was this present. Is not well done?
Excellently done. If God did all.
'Tis in grain, sir. 'Twill endure wind and weather.
'Tis beauty truly blent, whose red and white nature's own sweet and cunning hand laid on. Lady, you are the cruelest she alive if you will lead these graces to the grave and leave the world no copy.
Oh, sir, I will not be so hard-hearted. I will give out divers schedules of my beauty. It shall be inventoried, and every particle and utensil labeled to my will. As item, 2 lips, indifferent red. Item, 2 gray eyes with lids to them. Item, 1 neck, 1 chin, and so forth. Were you sent hither to praise me?
I see you what you are. You are too proud. But if you were the devil, you are fair. My lord and master loves you. Oh, such love could be but recompense, so you were crowned the nonpareil of beauty.
How does he love me?
With adorations, fertile tears, with groans that thunder love, with sighs of fire.
Your lord does know my mind. I cannot love him, yet I suppose him virtuous, know him noble, of great estate, of fresh and stainless youth, in voices well divulged, free, learned, and valiant, and in dimension and the shape of nature, a gracious person. But yet I cannot love him. He might have took his answer long ago.
If I did love you in my master's flame, with such a suffering, such a deadly life, in your denial I would find no sense. I would not understand it.
Why? What would you?
Make me a willow cabin at your gate, and call upon my soul within the house. Write loyal cantons of contemned love, and sing them loud, even in the dead of night. Halloo your name to the reverberate hills, and make the babbling gossip of the air cry out, "Oh, Livia! Oh, you should not rest between the elements of air and earth. but you should pity me.
You might do much. What is your parentage?
Above my fortunes, yet my state is well. I am a gentleman.
Get you to your lord. I cannot love him. Let him sin no more. Unless, perchance, you come to me again to tell me how he takes it. Fare you well. I thank you for your pains. Spend this for me.
I am no feed post lady. Keep your purse. My master, not myself, lacks recompense. Love make his heart of flint, that you shall love. And let your fervor, like my master's, be placed in contempt. Farewell. Fair cruelty.
What is your parentage? Above my fortunes, yet my state is well. I am a gentleman. I'll be sworn. Thou art. Thy tongue, thy face, thy limbs, actions, and spirit do give thee fivefold blazon. Not too fast. Soft, soft. Unless the master with a man. How now? Even so quickly may one catch the plague? Methinks I feel this youth's perfections with an invisible and subtle stealth to creep in at mine eyes. Well, let it be.
The past, the present, and the future that awaits us and this festival. And Joe and Philip Sneed, Phil Davidson was going to do this and then was able, I guess, to get out of town. You know, people work very hard, and he had a chance for a little bit of a break. And Philip Sneed has very graciously agreed to share and step in with us. Philip, we're so glad. And there's Emily Joe, his little daughter, who represents the future for us. Could you come and be Orsinio and Feste for us?
Two or three scenes in Twelfth Night. I'm playing Feste, and Philip, the redoubtable Philip Sneed, will be playing Orsino, Duke Orsino. And I have used these scenes on the school tour for the festival, only so that I could sing the songs that are in the show. So I grabbed the scenes wherever I could out of the play to make them work. The songs, again by way of introduction, are pre-recorded. This is my orchestra. From a production that I did in Tucson about 5 years ago. The music was originally written. It was newly created. It's not the music that Shakespeare intended the songs to be sung for. It was newly written for this particular production in Tucson. And it was so beautiful that I stole a copy of the recordings and carried them with me. Pardon me, I'm just gushing. This is the best night I've ever had at this theater. It's just fabulous for me. I feel like Shakespeare's own company is here. It's like... It's just fabulous. And George, I'll prove to you how much fun we can have. I don't think we need to say anything else, do we?
Just that this is a tough act to follow.
Really? Let's say we're not following it. We're just the end of it. Okay? Ready? Ready?
If music be the food of love, play on. Give me excess of it, that surfeiting the appetite may sicken and so die. That strain again, it had a dying fall. Oh, it came o'er my ear like the sweet sound that breathes upon a bank of violets, stealing and giving odor. Oh, mistress mine, where are you roaming? Oh, stay and hear your true love's coming, that can sing both high and low.
sun doth know. What is love? 'Tis not hereafter. Present mirth and present laughter. What's to come is still unsure. In delay there lies no plenty. Then come kiss me, sweet and twenty. Youth's a stuff will not endure. Youth's a stuff will not endure.
Enough. No more. 'Tis not so sweet now as it was before. Oh, spirit of love, how quick and fresh thou art, that, notwithstanding thy capacity, receiveth as the sea. Naught enters there, but falls into abatement and low price in a minute. So full of shape is fancy that it alone is high fantastical. Ah! Belong you to the Lady Olivia, friend?
Aye, sir. I am one of her trappings.
I know thee well. How dost thou, my good fellow?
Marry, sir, the better for my friends or my foes, and the worse for my friends.
Just the contrary, the better for thy friends.
No, sir, the worse.
How can that be?
Marry, sir, my friends praise me and make an ass of me. Now, my foes tell me plainly I am an ass. So that, by my foes, I profit in the knowledge of myself, and by my friends I am abused. So, sir, the better for my foes and the worse for my friends.
Why, this is excellent.
No, troth, sir, though it please you to be one of my friends.
Thou shalt not be the worse for me, there's gold.
But that it would be double dealing, sir. I would that you could make it another.
Oh, you'll give me ill counsel.
Oh, put your grace in your pocket for this once, sir, and let your flesh and blood obey.
I will be so much a sinner to be a double dealer. There's another.
Primo, secundo, tertio is a good play, sir. The old saying is, the third pays for all. The triplex is a good tripping measure, sir. The bells of St. Bennet may put you in mind. 1, 2, 3.
You can fool no more money out of me at this throw. If you will let your lady know I am here to speak with her, and bring her along with you, it may awake my bounty further.
That is a lullaby to your bounty till I come again. I go, sir. Let your bounty take a nap. I will wake it anon.
Oh, fellow, come. The song we had last night, mark it. It is old and plain. The spinsters and the knitters in the sun, and the free maids that weave their thread with bones do use to chant it. It is silly, sooth, and dallies with the innocence of love like the old age.
Are you ready, sir?
I prithee sing it.
Come away, dead, and in sad cypress let me be laid. Fly away, red. I am slain by a fair, cruel maid. My shroud of white stuck all with you, preparing my heart of death, no one
for thy pains.
Oh, no pain, sir. I take pleasure in singing, sir.
I'll pay thy pleasure then.
Truly, and pleasure will be paid one time or another.
Give me now leave to leave thee.
Oh, now the melancholy God protect thee, and the tailor make thy doublet of changeable taffeta, for thy mind is a very opal. I would have men of such constancy put to sea, that their business might be everything and their intent everywhere. For that's it that always makes a good voyage of nothing. There you will.
The 1985 company that are present here tonight. They don't know about this, but I would like them to come forward. To the front here, join Joey and Joan and Phil, bring Emily. We had a party, a company party yesterday to celebrate Shakespeare's birthday. It was an ice cream social in the Bomer lobby. We were going to have a weenie roast, but the weather wasn't too good. They wouldn't let us roast weenies in the Bomer lobby. So we just had to go with the ice cream. But there were all these beautiful little children. Now, I know there's some other company members, Rena, Kristen, Marianne, come on, Nancy, Judy. You're in the company, sure. Come on.
Richard.
Leah.
Sure. Dick Hay.
Dick Hay, where is he?
Oh, the sneaky dookie.
All right.
Here all the time.
Oh, good. Alicia's coming. As we make the transition from our time together here in Carpenter Hall to our time together in the exhibit center, we're going to use Joey's music to get us from one place to another. The first time I was aware of it was when we were doing Twelfth Night in 1959. Jackson was playing Feste, and Angus had the idea of having Feste in the final song leave the stage and go out the gate, and you just heard his voice out into the dark, and the moon was shining, and it was magical. It was very beautiful. I can't remember what Kirk Mee did in 1964 or Ted Payovich in '69. Joey thinks that Jeff Brooks did it the next time around. But as Peggy said, our memories get all mushed up. We can't really remember who played what, when, or exactly how it was. But Joey will start singing for us and will lead us out into the night. And I would like the members of the 1985 company to silently greet the 1935 company and accompany them to the exhibit center. Be their honor guard, as it were. And the rest of us will then progress behind them. But we'll need to be very quiet so we can hear Joe's music. And because this is a season of fire and light, and we know that theater undoubtedly started in caves around fires with people acting out the hunt of the day, or their domestic difficulties, who knows. We're all just holders of the flame and are passing it on to the Emilys of the world. Where is Frank Hans? There you are. Frank, would you come up here? Frank is a young member of our audience, also an actor in his own right. And I wonder, Frank, if you would hold this light and accompany Joe.
You're going to play the piano for me.
We are yours, Mr. Vincent.
Oh, great. I'll start up here. I want to hug all you people later.
Yes, there will be more time for hugging and talking and questions at the party.
And these lyrics are on the back of your program, if anybody would like to join with me. There's a wonderful chorus at the end of each one of these verses. When that I was and a little tiny boy, with a hey-ho, the wind and the rain, a foolish thing was but a toy, for the rain it raineth every day. With a hey-ho, the wind and the rain, for the rain it raineth every day. But when I came to man's estate, with a hey-ho, the wind and the rain, 'gainst knaves and thieves men shut up their gate, for the rain